Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto was Beast of Three Worlds and harem with Zelda? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Bloodlust002 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Ch.1 Demons die, imps appear, a hero is born. Konoha no Sato, a village literally hidden in the leaves, also a place of people called shinobi. In this village, many people lived in peace under the guard of the shinobi and their beloved leader, the Yondaime Hokage. It was a time of peace and prosperity for many, and the days ahead looked clear and bright, at least, until the sun began to fall and something happened that would leave many deep scars in this once happy village. It was at sunset on October 12th that something happened that the people of Konoha would never forget. At the time of sunset of that day, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. If one were to ask the people of the village what happened that day, would say how one part of the sky began to turn black, looking like some kind of hole. Once the hole was big enough, it began to glow with a red light that made it look like a tunnel of some kind. However, what happened next no one could have ever predicted, as small black squares began to pour out of the portal in the sky and eventually take on shape. This shape was something that the villagers would never forget. It was a demon fox with 9 tails, the Kyubi no Kitsune. That once bright and sunny day turned to a night of screams and bloodshed as the Kyubi no Kitsune ripped through the army of shinobi who tried in vain to protect their home. In mere hours, the greatest shinobi army in the history of the elemental nations was nearly destroyed. When all hope had seemed lost, unexpectedly a man with blonde hair and blue eyes had appeared riding a giant toad. The Yondaime had made his appearance, ready for battle. He was ready to put his life on the line, and if necessary make the ultimate sacrifice that would save his village, but also curse his son as well. The Yondaime stood in front of the fox with a cold glare, and began forming seals, and at the end he shouted out Shiki Fujin. When those words left his mouth, a bright light flashed through the area, and when it cleared, the Kyubi no Kitsune was gone. Since his work was done, the Yondaime looked at the giant toad, saying a silent goodbye as it disappeared in a puff of smoke. The young Hokage landed on the ground and held his chest in pain as he could feel the life being torn out of him. He soon found himself against a tree, breathing heavily. He sighed and spoke aloud as if it mattered. "My name is Namikaze Minato. I am the Yondaime Hokage, a proud ninja, a loving husband." He said this part with a tear rolling down his cheek. He brushed it off and continued, "I am the killer of the Kyubi no Kitsune and a proud father." He said that last part while his voice was crackling, and closed his eyes, ready for death to take him. However, the hands of destiny decided to give him a couple of extra minutes as a voice called, "So you're one responsible for Kyubi's death." Minato heard the voice and opened his, expecting to see the Shinigami waiting for its payment. What he saw caught the near-dead man off guard, for the creature in front of him looked more like a female imp instead of a god. Minato figured his mind was playing tricks on him while he was near death, and humored it. "Hello little imp, do you need something?" The imp creature in front of him, which he expected to fade away, or something, just gave him an annoyed glare. "Yeah, you can tell me what you did to Kyubi, and where did all of his power go?" Minato just blinked at what he heard. "You're real." The imp just sighed. "Yes, I am real. Now tell me, where is the power of the Kyubi?" Minato looked at the strange creature in front of him, not believing that an actual imp was standing in front of him. He was also silently cursing himself for not being able to prove to his sensei that he was right about imps all along. He shook his head and focused, remembering that his time was limited. "What do you want with that power? No good could come from such an evil power." Minato did his best to shout, even with weak body. The imp though just gave Minato a cold glare. "Don't you lecture me about that power, Light Dweller." Hearing this, Minato gave the imp curious look. "Light Dweller, what are you on?" Minato didn't finish what was asking as he held his chest in pain and coughed up a bit of blood. The imp gave him a concerned look. "You're dying, aren't you?" Minato just smiled. "Yes, I am dying. In order to defeat the Kyubi, I had to use a technique that would seal him away at the cost of my life." The imp just stared at him, confused, wondering for what reason would anyone do such a thing. Minato could tell what she was thinking, and began to explain. "The reason I would do something like that, it's because I have to protect all that are precious to me." The imp just kept staring, not understanding what he was saying, as he continued. "The people in this village are precious to me, from the smallest child to the eldest person. I hold them close to my heart, and would do anything to keep them safe, and with that desire I am given the strength to move forward and keep on protecting all that I love, no matter what." With those words smiled, but also showed tears of sadness. "However, I do regret that I will miss so much dying young, and I hope Hudson forgive me for what I did to him, and love the village as much as Ito." With those last few words, Minato had taken his last breath. The imp stood in front of the young Hokage, trying not to cry, as his words had been really touching for some reason. She felt like she should respect him and gave a silent prayer. She looked around and could tell they were in the middle of nowhere around and decided that she should make sure his people found him. The imp placed her hands close together and focused what little of her power she had until an orb of energy appeared. The imp shot the ball of energy into the air, and once it was high enough and exploded. The imp looked at her work and could tell that someone would see the signal. After observing her work, the imp looked down at the dead man in front of her. While she still felt sorry for him, she still had a mission of her own. The imp thought to herself, while I do pity you, I need the power of the QB, and you're going to help me. After those thoughts, the imp's body began to change, fade out until it was like a shadow, and the imp jumped into the dead Hokage's shadow. 3 hours later, after 3 long hours, 3 ANBU showed up to where the signal had come from to find the body of their beloved leader, the Yondaime. The ANBU, despite their years of training to keep their emotions in check, couldn't help but shed a tear at the sight of their fallen leader. The one ANBU member wearing a dog mask with silver hair picked up the corpse of the late Hokage and made their way back to the village, Konoha morgue. The morgue, despite it being a place to store the dead, was on this night very lively as more and more people who had fallen to the QB were being rushed in. The staff in charge had their hands full identifying who was who and contacting any no relatives. However, in one room, it was the worst, for it held the corpse of Minato Namikaze, and next his body was his predecessor Sarutobi Hijiran, also known as the Sandaime Hokage. The old man looked at his successor full of great sorrow at seeing someone so young, and whose life was just starting, was gone, and already leaving someone behind who needed them. Sarutobi, while sad that Minato was gone, was also upset that he didn't let someone whose life was nearing its end to take his place while he continued to go on. Yet, there was nothing he could do, for Minato was gone and he would have to take on the role of village once again and bear with the responsibilities it brought, along with the headaches and paperwork. With one last sigh, Sarutobi took one final look at Minato. I hope you knew what you were doing when you sealed the QB into him, Minato. With that, Sarutobi began to walk out the door but failed to notice the shadow move from Minato's corpse into his own council room. Sarutobi, along with his old teammates, shinobi clan heads, and major civilians who had survived the QB's attack, were brought to an emergency meeting. Many had gathered hoping that a new Hokage had been chosen already so they could get on with better things such as burying their dead. Sarutobi stood and cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. Everyone, I'm glad you were able to arrive despite the important needs of conforming. Your loved ones are safe. I will make this short as possible. The Yondaime has indeed fallen in battle. Hearing this, many of the members of the Shinobi Council looked down in grief of their, while some of the civilians seemed pleased he was gone. After giving everyone the time that was needed to adjust, Sarutobi continued, Fear not though, for I've decided with the approval of the council to come out of retirement and retake the title of Hokage. Hearing this, many of the council members began to talk amongst themselves, but agreed to it anyway. After that was settled, one of the members of the Shinobi Council, one Inuzuka-sama, looked at Sarutobi with a questioning look. Hokage-sama, if I may, what of the Minato's son? Sarutobi looked at the canine-looking women, knowing she would this, since Some and Kushina were very close friends. Some would go even they were as close to sisters in personality. Sarutobi took a deep breath. Some Minato and Kushina's son is alive and well. Some let a sigh of relief at hearing this. She felt great pain knowing that both her friend Kushina and her husband were gone, but was glad their son had lived. Sarutobi could see the relief in the women's eyes. He looked around, and saw the same thing in many of the other shinobi members' eyes as well. One member who was also a close friend of Kushina, named Abirame Shibi, looked at Sarutobi. Hokage-sama, tell us, where is Kushina-san and Minato-san's son now? After Shibi had said that, a knock at the entrance door was heard, which leads Sarutobi to smile. That should be them now. The door opened and a figure began to walk in, and seeing this person, many of the civilian council members began to seethe in anger at seeing who was holding the child of their Hokage. It was none other than the snake bitch Mitarashi Anko. One council member who was a civilian member decided to voice his stupidity loudly. What is the ing song bitch doing holding the son of our Yondaime Hokage? That filthy whore will corrupt dash. Anko interrupted the man. Shut your ing mouth. Well, why? I just got him to sleep. Hearing this, many of members just realized that there was a baby in room and began to look down in shame like children who had said something wrong. Unfortunately, it didn't matter as the bundle in Anko's arms began to stir, catching the attention of everyone in the room. The blonde-haired boy managed to get his head out of wrapping that covered him and looked around. Everyone looked at the boy, amazed how much he looked like Minato. The boy opened his eyes and began to look to see who was holding him and began to squeal at the sight of Anko. Hearing this, Anko began to panic, not having the slightest clue what to do, and looked towards the Hokage with a pleading look. The elderly Hokage just laughed along with many of the other members who had children, and remembered what it was like holding their son and daughters for the first time. Sarutobi looked at young women with a kind smile. Anko, there is nothing wrong, he seems to like you. Hearing those words, Anko felt some kind warmth in her chest. She began to wonder if this was what it felt like to be a mother, and with that thought Anko quickly dismissed it. I'm too young to be a mother now, an elder sister. While Anko was lost in her thoughts, Sarutobi began to explain what was to be done with Naruto. Many of the clan heads wanted to adopt Naruto to honor Minato and Kushina, but many of civilians also wanted that to gain political favor. Some of members wanted Naruto to put into training right away and straight into the shinobi life. This was quickly silenced by Sarutobi, much to Danzo and some civilian members' dismay. After many hours, it was decided that Naruto was to be put into an orphanage and raised like a normal child, and that he was not to be told of the Kyuubi until he old enough. There were some protests to this. Even Anko offered to take Naruto in, but since she was still a child she couldn't. The meeting soon ended and everyone began to take their leave after they had a chance to hold or play with Naruto. After the last member left, Sarutobi decided that it time for him to also get some sleep along with Naruto and Anko. Sarutobi household. Sarutobi brought Naruto and Anko to his home, offering them a place to stay for the night. Anko wanted to object but remembered the young life in her arms and just went along with it. The old Hokage took the two into a small room that had a regular-sized crib and a bed next to it, as if everything was set up with a few hours. Anko put Naruto in the crib. The small child was asleep, and she herself was barely awake and was ready to turn into the night. She went over to the crib and placed her hand on the cheek of the small boy and smiled. Naruto-kun, I swear I'll be the closest thing to family. I will make sure you are safe and happy, no matter what it costs me. She placed a small kiss on the boy's cheek and went to her bed, was soon asleep. However, if Anko had been a bit more alert, she would have noticed the strange shadow that was following her and Naruto. For out of the shadow the small imp-like creature had appeared once again. This time, it came into light and showed itself. The imp looked somewhat like a child with her body. Most of her skin was black with a bit of white covering her, some of right leg, stomach, chest, and leading to her jaw. She had strange light green symbols on her arms and legs and her elf-like ears. Her face was covered by strange stone-like mask covering one of her eyes, while the other showed it to be yellow with a red pupil. Her hair was in a ponytail with orange hair with blonde tips. The imp looked over the boy and just stared at him as if checking him for something abnormal. Eventually, the imp reached out her arm towards Naruto's stomach as if to grab something, but was soon stopped by what appeared to be a barrier and a seal on his stomach. The imp sighed, seeing there was no way she could obtain the power she needed, and looked at the small boy. She looked at the boy below her and could see the resemblance of the fallen Hokage and understood why he chose this boy to seal such a dangerous power. Makes sense. What man could ask another to use for such a thing? The imp gave one final look. She noticed something strange on the boy's forehead and looked to see a white symbol she thought only to be in legend. She stared at the boy in wonder now and put on a devilish-looking evil grin. Well, since I can't use the power of the Kyuubi myself, I'll use you to accomplish my goals. She slowly brought her hand down to Naruto's cheek and began to rub it. You and I are going to be good friends, little beast. The imp gave off a childlike laugh and brought herself near Naruto's tiny ear. So remember this name, Midna. With that last word, Midna merged with Naruto's shadow so that she could watch him and see his observe him. It had been 6 years since the Kyuubi had attacked the village of Konoha. It took a lot of hard work, but with the leadership of Sarutobi Hijirin, the village was able to remain strong and its people happy. Sarutobi had to retake his position as Hokage for the village, but was glad he did as long as he could keep his precious village out of harm's way. He had no trouble with it except for the damn paperwork. Even now he was forced to work on finish yet another pile of paperwork when a cloud of smoke suddenly appeared. When all of the smoke had vanished, a man wearing a dog mask stood before the aged leader. Is there a problem, Inu? Sarutobi asked, knowing the answer already. Hi, Hokage-sama, it seems someone has refused to sell something to Naruto, and Anko is threatening the shop owner again. Sarutobi sighed and rubbed his temples in frustration at hearing this. Ever since the night Naruto was put into Anko's care, she had been everything that the boy needed. She was a mother, sister, guardian, teacher, and friend. She was always there for him and provided him with everything a child needed to grow up, and if anyone tried to harm him would suffer greatly. 5 years earlier. The first incident happened when just before Naruto turned 1, and Anko had decided to move out of the Sarutobi's home and get a place for herself and for Naruto. Sarutobi tried to get them to stay, but Anko insisted that she and Naruto had their own place, but they were grateful for everything Sarutobi had done for them. In addition, her snakes were getting too big for the old man's mansion. Anko had decided that she wanted to move into a place that had plenty of space and allow her and Naruto to be left alone to train. She had decided to move into the Chunin exam tower. The tower had plenty of space and was currently being unused since the exam weren't to be held in the village for at least a decade. The night of the incident, Anko had managed to get all of her things to the tower but hadn't had a chance to set anything up such as heat, pluming, and food stores, so she was forced to put up with a hotel. Normally this would not be a problem, but since you're the apprentice of a trader and the container of a demon, things weren't ever easy. Anko went to several hotels that night. Many of them outright refused to let her stay the night, or didn't even let her into the building. Anko wouldn't have normally taken the garbage she was getting that night, but since she had to take care of Naruto, he came first. So, she just gritted her teeth and moved on towards the next hotel. It took most of the night, but Anko did eventually find a hotel in the lowest slums of the village. Anko was able to get a room for the night, but the price was way over the top, and she had to pass by hordes of prostitutes and drug dealers before she got to her room. The room, however, was horrible. It was a real roach motel covered in filth, mold, and even a rat. Seeing the filthy state of the one-room apartment, Anko began to wonder why she was doing this, and then looked down at the baby she had nestled in her bosom. She smiled at this feeling, assured she was doing the right thing until OW. That feeling was soon replaced with a sharp pain from her chest seeing little Naruto biting down. After she brought him away from her chest, she chuckled a little. Guess you're hungry, aren't you, little guy? Wonder if babies like dango? After an hour or so, Anko managed to get some formula ready and feed the baby that was in her care. After about 3 or so bottles later, Anko looked at the little boy, wondering where he put all that in his small body, but threw it off as she got ready for bed. Once she had gotten Naruto to sleep, she placed him on the bed. She did a quick check for any hostiles, called it a night. As Anko and Naruto slept, she had failed to notice she and Naruto were being watched. While Anko had done a check for anything that would be hostile, she was still young and inexperienced for these men, as they managed to sneak and grab Naruto and get out without Anko even waking up. Training Ground 15. After the men had taken, Naruto rushed as fast as they could arrive towards the meeting point that was discussed. Within minutes, the men landed into the field and looked around, seeing many civilians and even a few council members, all with looks of insanity and bloodlust. The man who was now holding Naruto walked towards a sacrificial altar that was placed there for this very purposes. The man moved towards platforms and placed Naruto on it, and stood in front of the Ega crowd. The man was wearing a chunin vest and a headband around his neck. He spoke as clearly as he could in front of the masses. People of Konoha, I bring forth the demon that has destroyed our village. Hearing this, many of the villagers began to shout out for the death of the demon, but the man just placed his hand to silence them. Once the people were silent, the man spoke. People of Konoha, I have brought forth the demon so that we may retribution for all the lives this monster has taken, he said while pointing at Naruto. I have taken an oath to rid our beloved village of his evil, and with it get revenge for all of our fallen comrades and loved ones that this beast has taken away from us. As the man was talking, many of the villagers shouted out agreement towards what he was saying. However, the teammates were not as pleased, for they wished that he would shut up already and got the job done. Back with the loudmouth, he was still standing over the young infant, preaching about how he would rid Konoha of the vile demon. My fellow villagers, tonight will become the most holy of night, as I, the great Shishiwakamara, shall destroy this monster and become known as the great demon slayer. With this bold statement, many of the villagers began to shout out of joy and began to chant Shishiwakamara, the demon slayer, repeatedly. Hearing all of support he had gathered from the people in front of him, Shishiwakamara began his brilliant plan to fame and glory. Shishiwakamara stood upon the villagers and reached for a nearby scroll. He placed of little blood on seal and summoned the object that was sealed inside of it, a long katana covered in a purple silk cloth covering it. Shishiwakamara removed the cloth and let the wind take in a dramatic fashion as he held the blade above his head, letting the blade shine in the moonlight. Shishiwakamara stood there letting the people look upon his greatness before he did the deed that would make him a legend. Shishiwakamara cleared his throat and began to speak. People of Konoha, the time has come that I, the great Shishiwakamaru, use this holy blade. This blade was forged by smiths who had reached enlightenment, and was dipped into holy stream, making it the purest blade for destroying evil. Many, if not all, of the surrounding mob looked at Shishiwakamaru and the blade, believing the lie that Shishiwakamara had said about the sword, where the truth was that he got the thing for less than 10 ryo at a pawn shop. Seeing that he had the mob in the palm of his hand, Shishiwakamaru decided to finally wrap things up and began his flawless plan to greatness. Grabbing a bottle of rice wine and pouring it on the blade and held it just above Naruto's chest. My fellow villagers, the time has come for us rid the village of the demon, and once and for all. Once that is done, I shall then go and rightfully take the title of Hokage and run this village as it should be. Hearing this, many of the villagers began to cheer at the thought of Shishiwakamaru being the new Hokage. Shishiwakamaru smiled at this thought, for once brought the head of the demon to Sarutobi, the old man would soon realize his mistake of letting him live and declare him the new Hokage. After that, he began to see how he would clean up the village and make it as it should be. First, by making sure that things like peace treaties between foreign villages were thrown out. he would make sure that so-called allies knew their place and it was at the feet of Konoha. Then it would be to make changes to the ninja code about how one's teammates were more important and never to be left behind. Nonsense, the only thing that mattered was getting the mission done. If a few weaklings had to die in order to remain strong, so be it. As long as the money was received, who cares? After that he would have to make some major changes to the academy since the brats there were getting off easy. They needed to be taught powerful jutsu at the youngest of age possible, and if they couldn't hack it then the little brats deserved to die since they didn't love their village enough. He would also have to make sure that the kunoichi problem was taken care of. The very idea of women being equals of men was laughable. If anything women were good for, it was cooking, cleaning, children, and of course pleasure. That is what kunoichi should be for, not training and trying to be better than men but using their bodies to discover secrets, pleasing their teammates, and their clients. After Shishiwakamara's little fantasy was done, he brought himself back to reality, and held his sword tightly. He slowly held it above Naruto, who was just sleeping and completely oblivious to what was happening around him. Shishiwakamara held the blade waiting for the right moment to strike the demon in the most dramatic fashion, and to make sure everyone was watching his moment of greatness. Many of the villagers watched in anticipation. As the great demon slayer would soon rid their village of the demon, nothing could go wrong. One villager decided in the heat of the moment to express his enthusiasm: kill that demon. Unfortunately for that villager, those words his last as the ground beneath him began to shake under him and a large mouth suddenly appeared entrapping him, and a few people standing next to him were soon dead. Many of the villagers saw this and couldn't believe it, as a large black snake with sliver markings over its body and red eyes just came out of the ground and ate some of the mob members. Shishiwakamara and his teammates saw this and were clearly stunned at the sight in front of them, clearly not expecting this, and were about to make a move to attack. Before they could even make a move, a large yellow snake with green eyes suddenly appeared in front of them. It opened its mouth, spiting some kind of liquid at them. The two would have dodged, but it was too late. As the liquid hit them, they could feel fire cover the bodies as they began to melt away due to being covered in acid. Shishiwakamara looked around at the damage that was being done to his audience, as they were all slowly being torn apart by the large serpents. Looking at all this, Shishiwakamara felt himself beginning to tear up at the sight of his fame and glory being destroyed right in front of him. Inside of his head, Shishiwakamara began screaming, "It's not fair, this was supposed to be my moment of glory and fame. It's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair." Even in his rage, Shishiwakamara was still able to remember his mission as he looked at the baby boy beneath his sword. Seeing Naruto, Shishiwakamara gave a psychotic grin. "Even if I don't get famous now, it will be only a matter of time before everyone knows of my noble deed. All I have to do is wait until the word spreads. Then I'll claim all the glory that is rightfully mine." After getting this idea, Shishiwakamara brought his blade above Naruto once again. "Now die, demon fox," he shouted, bringing it down to kill Naruto. As he was making his move, something happened that Shishiwakamara didn't expect. Before Shishiwakamara could pierce Naruto's heart, the young baby was slowly covered by what looked like some kind of shadow. Naruto slowly began to fade into the darkness of the shadow as the sword hit the table, but not the baby that was once on it. Seeing what just happened, Shishiwakamara just stood there with his mouth wide open at he wasn't seeing. He wasn't seeing the evil blood of a demon, he wasn't seeing life fading from the evil monster's eyes like in his dreams, but most importantly, he wasn't seeing the filthy corpse of the bastard Kyuubi child that was meant to bring him fame and glory. At seeing or not seeing what was supposed to happen, Shishiwakamara did the only sensible thing a shinobi like would do. He lost it. What is this, some kind of demonic trick? "Where are you, monster? Come out to face the great Shishiwakamara Dynamite. I know you can hear, you filthy kitsune bastard. Come out so I can slay you, bastard. Nothing will stop me from achieving my great needs." Too bad for Shishiwakamara that in his rage he failed to notice the figure moving towards him, opening its mouth and taking a bite out of Shishiwakamara's sword, shattering into pieces. Shishiwakamaru eventually noticed what happened to his blade. Since only the hilt was left, he began to shake in fury, almost to a point to where it looked like he was hyperventilating. He looked at what had caused the damage to his holy blade and saw that in front of him was another large snake, this one violet with one of its eyes blue and the other green. This was the final straw for Shishiwakamaru. As he fell to his knees, his eyes glazed over, not saying any until why are you doing this to me? What have I ever done? He shouted, expecting some kind of answer from the snakes. They didn't answer him, but someone did. "I'll tell you what you did, you bastard." Shishiwakamaru heard this voice and began to tremble as he looked to where it had come from, only to his horror to see Midarashi Anko standing there looking pissed off beyond belief. Anko looked down at the man who had dared taken her little Oturo from her, and she began plotting 1,001 ways for the bastard to suffer. After she had awoken in the apartment, Alone, she immediately panicked and cursed herself for letting her guard down. She took off towards the what felt like the churka source of a group of people, and to make sure she was on the right track, she summoned her 3 most trusted snakes to help find and kill anyone. It had worked, for the snakes had managed to find a group of people in a large clearing cheering for something. When the snakes reported this and told her of what was going on, she ordered them to make sure not one of those bastards was to be allowed to leave that area alive and to enjoy their snacks. After receiving this order, the snakes moved for the kill, glad to have someone like Anko as their master. Anko looked down at Shishiwakamaru and instantly recognized him. His name was Diki Shishiwakamaru, an arrogant, boastful bastard who believed that the world was his and the men and mostly women belonged on their knees in front of him. He was the son of a very wealthy politician who managed to buy his son's way through the academy and get him a teacher that sucked up to money and political power. The only reason he managed to make it to Chunin were because of his many missions, which were all deranked and mostly failed due to his arrogance. His family name had also gotten him his rank due to the greed of the council. Another reason was that after the death of the Yondaime, the council was given full power and was able to give anyone they could control the rank of Chunin, but that was all they could. Soon after that, Sarutobi was reinstated, back with Shishiwakamaru and Anko. The two stood there staring at each other, one pair of eyes full of anger and bloodlust, the other full of disbelief at what he denial, until his mind started working and looked at Anko with anger. He held his broken sword out and pointed it directly at her Uuing snake whore. Anko heard what he said but didn't even flinch. She had been called worse things by people, and snake whore didn't even bother her in the slightest. Shishiwakamaru looked at the woman in front of him and noticed she didn't move after his vulgar remark he had made at her. Shishiwakamaru looked at Anko, tried to figure out why she didn't do anything in his mind to draw up the logical conclusions. It was obvious that she was intimidated by him, a powerful and strong male shinobi, while she was nothing but a weak and pathetic kunoichi and the student of a traitor. She was of course too afraid of his might and greatness, too afraid to move out of fear of greatness that was his, the greatness of the one and only Shishiwakamaru, giving off an arrogant smirk that right, you're nothing but a filthy whore and a traitor for harboring that demon. But that's not too surprising considering who your master was. Hearing this, Anko narrowed her eyes at him at being reminded of her bastard of sensei. Shishiwakamaru saw the anger in her eyes and began to chuckle. I'm sorry, did I hit a nerve, Anko-chan? Hearing this, Anko began to growl and clenched her fist to the point that they were bleeding. Shishiwakamaru saw this and decided to taunt her some more. Anko-chan, I don't really understand why you were protecting that monster, but I will not stop in my quest for greatness. If anything, you should join me. Anko just kept staring at him, not doing until she put on an evil smirk. Yuna, Riku, pain snake time. Hearing this, Shishiwakamaru looked at her confused until heard a strange king of hissing sound around and looked to see the Jinnet snakes from before had surrounded him. Before he could even make a move, the snakes attacked him. They each went for a part of his body. Yuna went for his right arm, Riku went for the left arm, and pain bit down on both his legs. Once the snakes had a piece of Shishiwakamaru in their mouths, they began to pour venom into the mouth, burning Shishiwakamaru. At hearing his screams, the snakes began to pull on each of Shishiwakamaru's limbs slowly and painfully as if he were a chew toy. While her pets were playing with their food, Anko looked at Shishiwakamaru as he was screaming in pain and begging the snakes to stop. She slowly began to walk towards Shishiwakamaru holding a sharpened kunai. When she finally reached the screaming Chunin, she looked at him with blank and soulless eyes. She held the kunai right to his throat and said, "Okay team, he is how it's going to ing work. You tell me where the Mai Otuto is and I'll make your death painless, got it Shishiwakamaru looked at her with pure fear in his eyes at the words of death. You can't be serious. You can't kill me, you stupid whore. When my Otosan hears about this, you'll hhhhhhh. Shishiwakamaru never got to finish his threat as Anko had shoved the kunai into his stomach. Anko's eyes somehow turned darker as she slowly pulled out the kunai. I will ask you again, where is my Otuto, you ing dickless piece of ing shit. Hearing this and fearing for another stab in the gut, Shishiwakamaru talked 3. Don't know, the demon just disappeared into what looked like some kind of shadow and he was gone. Anko looked at him, her anger growing at this, her dare and make up this bullshit story, and was about to stab him again until she got the truth. Just as she was about to stab him again when a loud Anko stop this instant was heard from the only person Anko respected. Sarutobi and a few ANBU had appeared in the field and looked around to see the extent of the damage. Sarutobi looked at the sight in front, not entirely surprised at what the snakes were doing to the man. While observing Anko, it was determined that she had a thing for torture. She would have to be considered to work in the interrogation department, but that was a later discussion. Sarutobi walked over to the young girl and looked at her with disappointment, and understanding at the same time. After taking a deep breath, Sarutobi spoke. Anko, you do realize that what you have done here would be considered a serious crime? Anko just kept her cold and soulless eyes on Sarutobi, who only shook his head. But since these people were going to kill an infant child, I see that their execution was necessary. Hearing this, Anko gave off a true smile and bowed to Sarutobi. Arigato Hokage-sama. After Anko had given her thanks, she then noticed something out of the corner of her eye. It appeared to be a shadow, but there wasn't enough light to cast it or any objects that could cast it. It was just a pool of shadows just sitting there, moving a little around as if it were alive. Sarutobi saw Anko looking off into the distance, also noticed the strange shadow sitting there just watching. Anko remembered what Shishiwakamaru said about a shadow thing taking Naruto, and this might be it. Without even thinking, Anko used the kunai she still had in her hand and threw it at the shadow, expecting nothing to happen. To her surprise, the shadow dogged the kunai. Everyone saw this and blinked. They even tried to cancel what they believed to be a genjutsu, but nothing happened. Anko, seeing this thing, decided to try hitting it again with another kunai, but the shadow just dogged it like last time. After her seconded failed attempt, Anko began to get angry and reached for another kunai until she heard, "Don't you want to try something else?" Everyone looked around for where the voice had come from, but only Anko seemed to be the only one that understood that the voice had come from the shadow. Anko stood in front of the shadow. "Where is Naruto?" Everyone looked at Anko like she was crazier than normal, but that thought didn't last long as the shadow resounded, "Don't worry, he's safe, so don't get your panties in a twist. Though you don't look like the type of girl that wears any ee." Anko blushed at this, not just because it was embarrassing, but it was also true. The shadow just sat there as if it were staring at Anko. "Do nothing until if you want him, keep up." With that, the shadow shot off towards the forest at incredible speed. Anko shot off after it before anyone could order her not to. Anko ran through the forest as fast as she could, barely able to keep up, but was close enough to see the thing that had taken her little brother. She could feel the burning sensation in her legs from the running, and the pain in her chest from lack of breath was immense. Nevertheless, she couldn't stop. That was not an option. She had to keep up, had to catch this thing, had to save her little brother. While Anko was chasing the shadow, ahead of her was academy student named Irika, was training hard to pass his genin exam. Normally most children would be asleep at this hour, but not Irika. He wasn't much of a sleeper since the night of the QB attacks, so he focused mostly on his training. Back with the shadow, it was moving as fast as it could and noticed that Anko was still able to keep up. Now Shadow had a reason for doing what it was doing. It wanted to test Anko to see if she could really protect its prize till he was ready. So far, she was doing well and had gained the Shadow's approval. It had gotten bored of this game and decided to give Naruto back, but needed to find a place to let Tobrat go. That's when it noticed Irika and found him too perfect for Naruto's protection, and maybe for a good laugh. Once Anko showed up and found him, the shadow increased its speed, got next to a tree behind Irika, and let Naruto out of the shadow. Once Naruto was out of the shadow, it took off, rushing past Irika. Irika was preparing his churka for the bunshin technique when he noticed a black something rush past him, causing him to jump and slip. He grabbed his head due to the pain and looked to see what it was that passed him, but saw nothing. The hell was that? Before Irika could think of anything else, he heard what sounded like a baby crying. Irika turned around and saw that it was indeed a baby. He went over and picked up the screaming child and gently rocked him in his arms. With this, Naruto started to calm down and looked at Irika with a smile and a look of curiosity. Even though Naruto was an infant, could recognize certain features from certain people. He mostly recognized the soft hands of the woman who usually held him, but this person was different. Naruto could feel something different. The hands on this person were different, rough but still gentle at the same time, and he liked it. As Irika was holding Naruto, smiling at the cuteness of the young infant he was now holding, he noticed something on Naruto's face. He saw 3 whiskers marks on each of the young baby's face and immediately recognized who it was. He's the. Irika never got to finish his thought as he suddenly felt a kunai knife against his throat, feeling the blade just inches from his throat, and did his best not to breathe or make any of movement. He slowly began to shake since he was still an academy student and didn't know what to do when he was captured by an enemy shinobi. At least he thought it was an enemy shinobi until he heard a voice, "Putmyngotoutownnow." After hearing, the threat began to get nervous that the person that was holding a blade next his throat was threatening him because he was holding her ototo. Irika swallowed the spit that building up in his throat. He took a deep breath and spoke, "Look, I just found him on the ground near a tree. I didn't hurt him or anything, I swear." Anko heard this and knew that he might be telling the truth since she knew that the shadow thing was the one who took Naruto. However, he and the shadow could still be working together, so decided to test him. She held the blade closer to Irika's throat and clearly said, "Why the hell should I believe you?" Irika and began to sweat in fear before coming up with the only thing he could think of, and because he sweat dropped, "I am so dead." Hearing this honest but rather pathetic answer, Anko decided to trust him for now. She removed the kunai from Irika's neck and couldn't help but giggle at his reaction as he suddenly fell to his knees in relief. Once Irika had calmed down and gotten his heart rate under control and his bladder under control, he turned to see his attacker. What he saw was something he didn't expect, as he saw a purple-haired girl near his age with brown eyes and a tooth hanging around her neck. Looking at this girl, for some reason, Irika couldn't help but feel his checks burn while looking at her. Anko had something similar happen to her while she stared at the young scar-nosed boy. He had brown and cute face, and from the neck down, he wasn't half bad either. After that, Anko shook her head, trying to rid herself of such thoughts as a blush covered her face. Now normally Anko would tease and flirt with some of the members of the opposite, and when she had them, she would crush their hearts for a good laugh. This time, however, she felt something different when she stared at this boy. While Anko and Irika kept up with the staring contest until Naruto decided he needed attention and began to cry, thus running the moment between the two. After Anko and Irika were brought back to reality, they focused their attention on the crying Naruto. Anko slowly rocked Naruto back and forth, calming down, while Irika stood next her smiling, which Naruto also seemed to enjoy his presence. It wasn't long until the Hokage showed up and found the two sitting next to a tree with Anko on one side and Irika on the other, and a baby Naruto between the two. Seeing this, the Sarutobi couldn't help but smile at the memory his wife and child doing the same thing their youth. Away from the group of shinobi, Midna looked down at the light dwellers and had to smile. She could see the boy had plenty of protection and would be safe. Now her only reason was for concern was the power inside the boy, not the boy himself, but she had to admit he was interesting. I can't wait to see what he's like when he's older. Present time. It was normal day in the village of Konoha. Many people were buying goods from the local markets, kids were playing in the streets, and everything was good. Except for a certain dango shop where a certain purple-haired woman was holding a kunai to the throat of a waiter, glaring with a massive amount of killer intent. "You call this dango? I should cut your balls and feed you to my snakes." While Anko was threatening the man, Naruto looked at the woman he considered an older sister and sighed, "Isn't it's not that big of a deal. Now could put the man down, you're making a scene and you're supposed to be an adult." Anko heard this and turned her glare towards her little brother out of embarrassment, but Naruto just ignored her since just to her killer intent. He just focused on his ramen, the most important thing in world, and inhaled a small amount of ramen. After took his first sample of ramen, Naruto he stood still for a second and then spit out the ramen that he was eating and turned his attention towards the waiter with a look of a mad killer in his eyes. If one were to look close enough, you could swear that Naruto's eyes turned red. He focused all of his attention on the waiter. "How dare you call this slop ramen? You must die!" And with that, Naruto leapt at the man, going for the kill. Too bad for Naruto that before he could do anything to the man, Anko grabbed Naruto by the back of shirt. Eventually Naruto realized he was being suspended in the air and glared at his sister. "Why did you stop me, Onizen? He ruined my ramen, it must be avenged." Hearing Anko shook her head back and forth. "Now Naruto, you're still just a civilian. When you're a ninja, then you can kill anyone you want within reason." Naruto looked at this with tears forming in his eyes. "But me ramen." Anko just rolled her eyes. "I'll buy you another bowl later at a better restraint. Right now there is something a little more important you need to do." Naruto looked at his sister, clearly confused. "Tell me, have you seen Imiko-chan around?" Naruto looked at Anko and around the area trying to find this Imiko and began to panic. "Crap, I must have left her behind." Anko rolled her eyes. "How can you lose a snake that big is beyond me, Naruto, but if you're going to look for her, try the park first." With that, Anko let Naruto go and he took off straight towards the park. Anko just gave a short chuckle at her brother's antics, then turned back to the waiter. "Now back to you and my ruined dango." The waiter began to shake in fear. Konoha Park. At the park, many children were spending their time enjoying their youth and innocence with friends. Everyone except one little girl with blue hair and strange white eyes. This made her weird, so the other children avoided her or made fun of her. After trying and failing to make friends as if her mother wanted her to, she gave up and just sat by a tree and waited until she could go home. This, however, didn't go as planned, as a group of girls who were slightly older than her walked up and stood before her. The leader of the group, a girl with brown hair, looked down at Hinata with a smirk. "Well, it's ugly bug-eye girl." At this, the girl's friends began laugh. Hinata held her head down and was on the verge of tears. The girls saw this and began tease her more, calling a crybaby. As the group began to pick on her, Hinata did her best to put herself in a ball, wishing that anyone would come and help her. Without even realizing it, Hinata got her wish. Naruto was running around the park doing his best to find his snake familiar Imiko when noticed a group of girls gathering around a tree. Curious as to what was going on, Naruto moved in closer to find all the girls were picking on this one girl under the tree. Naruto wanted to do something about it, but before he got his chance, as he noticed some of the branches in the trees began to crake and the leaves were falling rapidly. Naruto decided that it was best to make his move now. He walked towards the crowd and with as much force as he could and shouted, "Leave her alone." All the girls heard this and turned around expecting to find some adult looking down on them. What they saw, some brat half their size with an arrogant attitude. Since he was alone and rather puny, the girls assumed he was no real threat as the brown-haired leader went looked up at and said, "Who's going to make us, you?" Naruto just gave a smile, "Yeah, me and her." After he said that, a large snake had suddenly fallen out of the tree and landed right behind him. The girls looked at the giant snake behind him, instantly took off in every one direction screaming for their lives. As soon as they were all gone, Naruto looked at the girl that the others were tormenting and walked up to her. He could see she was still scared due to eyes being shut and her hands over her head to protect herself. Since he wasn't going to get her attention anytime soon, Naruto just bent his knees and waited for her to clam down and open her eyes. Eventually she did. Hinata looked around for any of the girls that were bullying her when she noticed a blonde-haired boy in front of her. Seeing that all bullies and that only the blonde boy was here, he must have scared them off. Hinata looked over the boy. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, blue beautiful eyes. For some reason Hinata felt her face warm up with that thought. She also noticed 3 whisker marks on each his of cute face. Again, Hinata's face started to heat up with this strange thought. She would have to ask her mother about this later. Naruto looked the girl in front of him. She looked to be about his age and seemed a little afraid of him. Her hair was blue and her skin was pure white, which made look kind cute. She had a pretty face that for some reason her face was red as if she was sick. The most noticeable thing about her was her eyes. They were white with no pupil or iris. It was kind of cool. After the two had gotten over their examination of one another, Naruto decided to speak. "Hi, name is Naruto, what's yours?" Hinata looked at boy in front of her, somewhat afraid to answer, but she somehow managed to say, "My name is Hinata." Hearing her answer, Naruto smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Hinata-chan." Hearing him call her Hinata-chan made the young Hyuga blush a deeper red. As she moved her head, she couldn't see it. However, she saw else as the large snake from earlier sitting behind Naruto staring at her. Emiko noticed that Hinata was looking right at her and began to shake in fear and hid behind Naruto. Hinata saw this and looked at Naruto, clearly confused. Naruto could see Hinata's confusion. He began to laugh. "Don't worry, Hinata-chan, Emiko-chan is just really shy. She is still a baby." Hinata blinked a few times while looking at the large snake, thinking, "That's a baby?" She walked over to it and got as close as she wanted to it and saw that it was clearly afraid of her. Hinata slowly put her hand under the large jaw of Emiko and began to rub it. As she did this, she heard the snake hiss in pleasure. Seeing this, Hinata began to giggle at the actions of the intimating yet shy beast in front of her. Naruto looked down at the girl who was playing Emiko and just had to smile. He was the only one that Emiko seemed to trust up until now, and seeing the way she was around Hinata must made him happy. He felt some kind of joy that he hadn't experienced in some time, and that made him glad he met Hinata and felt like nothing could go wrong. However, something happened that didn't go as planned as Naruto saw something in the distance. He noticed a large portion of the sky began to crake like glass, leaving some kind of pattern in its wake. What was really weird was that in the center of this hole seemed to be some kind of tunnel, and something was pouring out of the tunnel. Ground zero of tunnel. As the materials began to slowly fall from the tunnel, each one as large as a grain of sand but seemed to be alive. The materials slowly began to move around one another, building into 3 figures. As the last of the material fell into 3 figures, they each began to take shape. 2 of the figures looked human, twins in fact, except for pink hair and set of horns on top of their heads. The one of the left had short hair and cold dark look on her face. The one right had long hair, but her expression was of joy and happiness. However, the one in the middle was different from the other 2. She was redhead, with red eyes. Her hands had claws on and fangs sticking out of mouth. On top of her head seemed to be like something similar to dog ears, but looked more like fox ears. However, the most noticeable thing about her were the 9 red tails that were behind her. The 3 figures stared at the village before them, trying to form an opinion about the village that survived an attack by the Kyuubi no Yoko. The twins looked at girl in the middle, wondering what they should do. The girl in the middle with the 9 tails was silent for a moment. "We'll head straight to the village and tell them we come in peace." The twins had different reactions while hearing this. The twin with the long hair gave a huge grin, glad to avoid the fighting as much as possible. The short-haired twin, however, gave a scowl. "This is pointless. We should just go kill all these worthless humans, at least that way this trip won't be so boring. The red girl gave a glare. We are not here to start a war, Lucy, so if you can control your savagery for a couple of hours we can get this down and leave. The girl now named Lucy glared at the redhead with pure hate in her eyes. She hated being called a savage, even if her bloodlust at times might be true, it still pissed her off. She especially hated it when the redhead in front of her reminded her of it. Before the two did anything, the other twin with the long hair got between them with tears building in her eyes. Stop, this isn't why we're here fighting each other, won't solve anything. The two heard this but still glared at each other ready for the kill until they heard please. Hearing this, both girls stopped what they doing and went over to the crying member in their group. The redhead just sighed and brushed the tears away. You can be such a crybaby sometimes, NYU. Lucy just looked at her twin idiot and looked away. NYU smiled seeing how she just got her only friends to stop fighting again. It wasn't the first time she played peacemaker between the two, and it wouldn't be the last. The three girls began walking towards the village, taking their time so they didn't cause any panic. However, the redhead was in deep thought about this mission they were being sent on. It was clear why the council sent her, and what she was supposed to do, but she's still young and inexperienced at this sort of thing and was worried she would blow it. NYU could see the distress that her friend was in and decided to comfort her. Hey, it's okay to be nervous with something like this, she said while having a hand on her friend's shoulder. The redhead could see that NYU was trying her best to support her. She was always like that ever since they had first met when they were younger. Her friendship with Lucy was a little different. She respected Lucy and admired her fighting skills. There were times when she wouldn't mind strangling the little bitch. However, in the grand scheme of things she couldn't ask for better things. Friends, the two behind her, seeing their friends starting to perk up, the twins decided to add their final 2 cents in as they spoke in unison. You know we got your back, QB. Hearing this, the kitsune smiled as they continued towards Konoha village gates. After the tunnel was formed and was seen by everyone, the village was put on full alert for every shinobi both on and off duty had to report for active service. The civilians were all placed into safe houses for their protection, and the gates were sealed shut. Even the Hokage, the village leader, was suited up. Everyone stood ready for a repeat performance of 6 years ago. Sarutobi stood in front of his village with a stern look on his face and a hardened look in his eyes. 6 years ago, he felt that a similar when the demon Kitsune attacked the village and took the life of his predecessor, and now it looked as if another demon had come to finish the job. However, even if it were 1 demon or 100, they would not fail. Standing next to him was one of his most trusted kunoichi Mitarashi, Anko. This woman had spent last 6 years looking after someone who had suffered the most and had never regretted it. He was a bit surprised to actually see her here and not with her younger brother Anko. Shouldn't you be with Naruto? The purple-haired kunoichi looked at her leader with a serious look on her face. Hokage-sama, as important as my little brother is to me, my loyalty towards the village takes priority right now. Sarutobi smiled at hearing this. Anko, while I do admire your sense of duty towards the village, what I meant was, shouldn't you make sure that Naruto isn't nearby trying to see what's going on? Anko looked at her leader and wanted to say something to defend her little brother. She knew that the Hokage was right. Naruto had a habit of getting into trouble with people like the Chunin of the village and the Jounin of the village as well. In addition, there was Anbiyun, the civilians, and the Hokage and the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, along with her snake summons who refused to babysit him anymore. It's almost like they don't like my little Naruchan, Anko thought to herself. Brushing these thoughts aside, Anko looked at her village leader. Hokage-sama, I can assure you that Naruto is nowhere near the area and won't cause any trouble. Anko said this proudly until she heard, shut up, Nei-chan, I don't cause trouble. Hearing his, Anko looked up at the tree. She saw a large yellow snake sitting on one of the branches with 2 children on it, one of them being her little brother. Seeing the blonde-haired boy, Anko could feel one emotion as this moment raged. Naruto, get your ass down here, now! Naruto filched at this since his Nei-chan only yelled at him like that when he was really in trouble. Emiko started to shake out of fear at being yelled at by Anko, also causing the weak branch she was sitting on break until a loud snap was heard and the branch gave out. Seeing this, Anko would have been worried about the safety of her younger brother if he and his pet snake weren't falling towards her. Ah crap. Once the large snake hit the ground, everyone looked to see what the damage was. What they found was small crater with a large snake knocked out and 2 children holding each other, and 1 special jounin being crushed. With Naruto and Hinata, the 2 children were still holding each other out of fear of the fall. Naruto was the first realized that they had landed and looked around, not seeing his Nei-chan relaxed him a bit. He also noticed that Hinata was still holding on to him rather tightly. Hinata-chan, yo-chan, let go of me now, he said with a nervous chuckle. Hinata now returned to reality and noticed just how close she was. No, Naruto, and turned bright red and she backed away. Sorry Naruto-kun. Naruto, who was also a bit red since he had never been that close to someone of the opposite, excluding Anko of course. Brushing this embarrassment, Naruto looked around and saw many of the shinobi glaring at him. Nothing unusual about that. Then he saw someone that always made him smile, Ji-san. Hearing this, Sarutobi couldn't help but smile. Despite how angry he was, he considered Naruto a grandson and didn't want to lose that bond with the boy. Keep a stern look on his face, he looked straight at the blonde boy. Naruto, why are you here? You should have gone to the shelters with the other villagers. Naruto just gave the old man a sour look. Why would I go there? It's boring and this is where all the action is supposed to be, Ji-san. Hearing this, Sarutobi shook his head at the boy's stubborn attitude. Not to mention, without you or Nei-chan around they wouldn't let me in. Sarutobi's sweat drooped at this. Know that the gaki was right. Looking around, Sarutobi noticed that Naruto wasn't alone as he saw a young girl hiding behind Naruto's back. The old man smiled at tries and failures. It looked like the blonde had finally made a friend. Naruto, who is this behind you? Naruto looked confused, then remembered who he had brought with him. Sorry Ji-san, I forgot to introduce you. Moving away, Naruto presented the blushing girl. Ji-san, this is Hinata-chan. Hinata-chan, this is Ji-san Hokage. Hinata looked at her village leader, blushing a bright red and playing with her fingers. And nice to meet you, Hokage-sama. At this sight, the old man couldn't help but chuckle at seeing the village outcasts being friends with one of the village harem. Seeing that nothing was happening, Naruto began to get bored. Hey Ji-san, what's happening anyway? Or is it common for all the shinobi to just stand around during an emergency? Everyone that heard this glared at Naruto. One jounin even went to shout, shut your mouth you little dash. That was as far as he got when he noticed the Hokage glaring at him, almost daring him to finish that sentence. Turning back to the children, they noticed the confused looks on their faces and were mostly likely wondering what the foolish jounin was saying. Since he didn't want to tell Naruto about his burden yet decided to distract the children with something else. Naruto, do you really want to know what's going on? The blonde nodded his head, wanting to know why everyone was so alert. Taking a deep breath, Sarutobi began to explain what was happening without giving away too many details. Naruto, I'm sure you and Hinata saw the strange tunnel? The two nodded. Well, I'm sure you remember the story of the Kyuubi that attacked 6 years ago. Again, the two nodded since everyone had heard the story about how the Yondaime defeated the demon Kitsune at the cost of his life. Sarutobi could see that the children understood what he was talking about and continued, well, what isn't mentioned in the history books or any of the stories that before the Kyuubi attacked a tunnel like the one you just saw appeared before the demon attacked. The two children gasped at this, now understanding just how dire the situation really was. Even Emiko was shaking out of fear. Seeing this filled Sarutobi with a bit of shame at scaring the children like that, but he had to make sure they knew how serious this was. Feeling that he had done enough to scare the children, Sarutobi was about to call for a jounin to escort the children to the shelters when Hokage-sama, something is coming. It was too late. Everyone was tense at this moment. Some were feeling a sense of déjà vu to what happened 6 years ago. Some were scared out of their mind at the thought of facing a demon and didn't want to die. Others thought if they killed Naruto, then the other demon might go away. As for Naruto and Hinata, they were scared and a little excited for some reason. For some strange reason, Naruto's shadow started to react straggly as well. As the fear was building in the shinobi, do their best to ready themselves for whatever was coming. They prepared themselves for anything, a giant demon, an army of bloodthirsty monster, hell, even a return of the Kyuubi itself. They were prepared for that. They weren't, however, prepared for what came into view. For what they saw were 3 strange-looking children that were walking towards the village, and almost everyone could tell they weren't human. Seeing the 3 children, Sarutobi didn't know what to think. He was debating whether or not this was some demon trick, or that they were being attacked by demonic children. He kept his guard up, though even if they looked like children they were still demons, and they were still dangerous. As the 3 demon children got closer, the shinobi prepared themselves for a sign of hostility from the demons. As the fox demon and her followers approached the village, everyone stood on guard ready for anything. Finally, as she approached the old Hokage, a stone and cold look on her face as she stared at the village leader and gave a fox-like grin, konnichiwa, and held up a peace sign. This caused everyone to face fault at this moment at the demon's unusual attitude. While Kyuubi laughed at this, her friend's sense of humor at an important time like this, NYU held her face in her hand out of embarrassment at her friend's antics to act out in a serious situation. Lucy, on the other hand, wanted to almost kill the fox demon in front of her and slaughter the humans around her. Kyuubi, however, honestly believed it was the funniest thing she had ever done, and continued to laugh. After everyone had gotten back on their feet and regained their stance, they looked at the demon they spent so much time fearing was acting like a child. Seeing this, the time of jokes was over. Kyuubi decided to put aside her humor and put of her lessons about manners and politics into practice. Putting on a straight and serious face, Kyubi bowed to Sarutobi to show respect. Greetings, I am Semiazas. Kyubi no Kitsune, it is an honor to meet you. Everyone did a double take on this, clearly not expecting the demon to be so formal, to which Sarutobi had to resound it in order to show respect. I am Sarutobi Hijirin, Sandame Hokage and leader of this village. Everyone looked at their village leader with awe, some being young enough to only see their Hokage as a kind grandfather, while the older generation smiled at seeing the old man's inner fire rekindled, as the demon and the Hokage faced each other, and what looked like the two of them were about to face off. Too bad one blonde-haired brat decided to ruin the moment. My name is Mitarashi Naruto, nice to meet you. Everyone groaned at this, some even glared at the blonde for killing the mood but didn't say anything. With the demons, they were clearly surprised by the blonde's actions, not expecting someone to be so forward even if they children. Kyubi looked at the blonde-haired boy confused, not expecting this kind of reaction from someone. Hi Naruto-san. Hearing this, Naruto gave an annoyed look. It's Naruto, that whole sand stuff was never for me, too fancy and noble-like. Kyubi looked at the blonde in front of her beyond confused. With all of her training in nobility and politics, she had no way of dealing with someone so like her. While Naruto and Kyubi were having their moments, NYU and Lucy were watching their friends struggle. NYU looked at her sister. This was bound to happen. Lucy just gave an evil smile. Hi, put a proper noble in with a wild commoner, and this is bound to happen. I say we sit back and enjoy the show. While the sisters were watching, Hinata, who felt left out, decided to try to get to know the other girls since Naruto seemed distracted. She walked over to the two and tried approaching the one with long hair. She seemed nice, so maybe she had a chance to make another friend. While she tried to get NYU's attention, her luck turned sour as it was Lucy who saw her first and gave her a glare that made the elders of her clan look like children. Lucy POV. Lucy was looking at her fox friend, smiling and watching the pain in the ass be in a situation she couldn't get out of when she noticed someone walking towards her and her sister. She noticed human girl seemed nervous and was approaching NYU to she and get her attention. Just by looking at her, Lucy could tell the wide-eyed human lacked confidence, and it made her sick. From the way the human was dressed, she was obviously from a noble family, and most likely spoiled rotten. She most likely spent most of time hiding behind others and letting them do her work, and probably didn't get a lot of attention from her father or her mother. Therefore, Lucy concluded that she didn't like this and didn't want anything to do with her. Just as Hinata was about to get NYU attention when Lucy spoke first. What the hell do you want, human? Regular. Hinata flinched at the tone in Lucy's voice. It reminded her of the elders when they didn't approve of something she did, which was pretty much everything. Since Lucy had already decided she didn't like her, Hinata was about to back away when she noticed Naruto looking back with Naruto and the Kitsune girl, and could see that he had no problem being open with someone he had just met, even if they were a demon. She smiled at seeing this and felt a strange warmth flow over her as she stared at the two demon. Hello, my name is Hyuga Hinata. It's nice to meet you. Both Lucy and NYU and to do a double take at this. 1 minute the girl in front of them was a nervous wreck and now standing before them like she had known them for years. Seeing this as way to make friends, NYU decided to make the first move. Hello, my name is Diclonius NYU and this is my twin sister Diclonius. Lucy, we're thrilled to meet you, Hinata-san. Hinata smiled, glad to see that NYU wasn't like her sister Lucy, and actually waned to be friendly with her. Lucy, on the other hand, didn't like how close her sister was getting to the human but couldn't do anything about it since NYU wanted to be friendly with her, and she could never get her sister to listen. Back with Naruto and Kyubi, the blonde boy and Kitsune had been talking for a couple of minutes, getting to know each other and getting very friendly. They would talk about their likes and dislikes, and Kyubi would mention various things about the demon world and how it worked. While they were talking, Naruto decided to ask what everybody nearby was wondering ever since they first noticed the demon trio. Hey Kyu-chan, just what are you and your friends doing here anyway? Hearing this, everyone began to listen and wanting to know if they were going to have to prepare with a war against a horde of demons. Kyubi looked at the blonde with wondering why he would ask a question like that. It made her wonder what the blonde was after. Could he have been sent to spy on her? Perhaps he was meant to gain her trust. Maybe he was sent to gain her trust, learn all of her secrets, and use them against her. What if he was sent here to whisper sweet nothings into her ear and gain her affection until to betray her, and leave her as his submissive pet whose only purpose was to please his every lustful desire? Kyubi shook her head at that last thought, wondering where that had come from. Shaking her head with that strange thought, Kyubi decided to answer and lay everyone's fears to rest. Naruto, the reason I am here is to make up for what happened 6 years ago and offer compensation for what happened and for the lives that were lost. Everyone gasped at hearing this. Some even voiced their opinion on the matter. Fealty demon, you expect us to believe that killed the demon killed them all? As the shouts from the surrounding men and women all screaming for the blood of the Kitsune girl in front of them until silence. Everyone kept their mouths shut at the voice of their Hokage. Even Naruto, who had always thought of the village leader as nothing more than an old geezer, looked at him with a new look of respect. Kyubi felt the same way when she looked at the old man. She spent most of her time with high-class nobles and politicians that just bored her to death. But to be in the face with some like Sarutobi, a true warrior who had brushed with death many times and had years of combat behind his eyes, she couldn't help but smile out of respect. Sarutobi stepped forward, never taking his eyes off Kyubi, and asked with a stern voice, "Tell what you are offering and your reasons behind it, and I may be willing to listen." Hearing this surprised Kyubi, since she really didn't expect him to really care what she had to say. "But she sent here to make this offer. We of the demon world are offering an alliance between our realm and the village of Konoha." Hearing, many began to whisper when they heard alliance, while Sarutobi just raised an eyebrow at this. Kyubi continued, "As for what we are offering, we are willing to offer resources, technology, and even offer aid to you in time of need." Everyone that heard this was speechless at hearing that could be allies with demons and would be gaining a great advantage over their foreigners' rivals. Many of the shinobi began to talk amongst themselves about the thought of being allies with demons, while few to seeing the positive of such things. Many believed it to be a mistake. Listening to the voices around him led Sarutobi to consider the pros and cons of such an alliance as well, but something was bothering him. Why would the demon world want to ally themselves with those that defeated one of their own? There had to be more to this. Hearing some voice of approval gave a bit of relief, almost believe her mission to be a success. Sarutobi then spoke, "Those hopes when he spoke. Your offer is generous, but I can't accept such a treaty without knowing your own reasons behind it." Even though she had expected this, Kyubi couldn't help but sigh in annoyance and the headache she was feeling. However, she knew she would have to explain her actions. She just hoped that the Hokage believed her words, or this would get messy. Taking a deep breath, Kyubi began to speak, but nothing came from her mouth, as her stomach spoke louder than her voice. Now, with a red face, Kyubi placed her hand behind her head and said nervously, "And perhaps we could discuss this over a meal. I'm quite famished." She laughed nervously. Hearing this, nearly everyone's face faltered at hearing this, not having a hard time believing that was supposed to be the leader of the demon world. However, it didn't matter to Sarutobi if she was a lord or a commoner. She was still an ambassador and had to be treated with respect. Something many would of his shinobi would not like this. Sighing, Sarutobi decided to do what he thought best for the village Kyubi. Everyone tensed at the tone of voice the Hokage was using and waiting for his order. "We shall discuss this alliance over a meal until you as well as your companions are considered guests within our village and treated with respect." At this, many of the shinobi around began to shout their disapproval at this, stunned that leader would even consider this, and were letting him know their opinion until silence. Everyone kept their mouths shut, knowing that they were now getting on the Hokage's nerves. "Do I need to remind you that we of the ninja of Konoha take pride in many things, and one of them is treating possible allies with respect?" Everyone kept quiet at this, feeling as though they were children being punished by a parent. The demon, on the other hand, were amazed that his one old man had such power over his troops. He would be a respected man if he came to the demon world, where even the most accent of demon generals would get along with him, and they usually hated humans. Seeing this man in front of her, Kyubi couldn't help but feel honored to meet such a man. And why, you felt something similar to what Kyubi was feeling, even if he did remind her of an old monkey. Lucy kept looking at the old man with an old smile on her face. "I wonder how much fun it would be to kill him." Rubbing his head at the large headache that was forming, Sarutobi decided to get this over with so he could relax for at least 5 minutes, and maybe smoke his pipe, maybe even read his Ika book. However, this was important, and took place over everything else. Taking yet another deep breath, Sarutobi turned to his shinobi and addressed them. "For now, these 3 will be considered foreign ambassadors, and will be treated with respect. Is that understood?" All the shinobi around him said the only thing they could after being scolded by their Hokage for more than once a day. "Hi, Hokage-sama." Now that everything was settled and they didn't have to fight their way into the village, Kyubi gave a sigh of relief. And Yu was also glad that she didn't hurt anyone and was curious as what human food would taste like. Too bad Lucy was having different thoughts about all this. She wanted to enter the village with a river of blood flowing around her, and to top it off she would have to eat human food. Disgusting. After Sarutobi made most of his shinobi return to their duties, he looked at the 3 demons. "Well, what should we do for a meal?" Before he could think of anything, though, a certain blonde spoke first. "Hey, why don't you take them for ramen, Aji-san?" Sarutobi looked at the blonde boy as if he was serious, which he was. The 3 demons just looked confused since they had never heard anything called ramen before, and it sounded tempting. Kyubi would ask more, but Naruto was too busy arguing with one another, so she had to ask someone else, and the only person left was the girl with white eyes. Looking over the girl, Kyubi could tell she had confidence problems, so she decided to try and approach her slowly. "Hy, I like your eyes. Are you blind? What's your name? Are you blind? Did I ask that already? Well, she tried to approach her slowly. The young Hyuga looked at the demon girl in front of her speechless. Who could blame her? She was standing in front of the most powerful demon of all time. My name is Hyuga Hinata. I am not be blind, and it's nice to meet you Kyubi-sama. Kyubi's smile turned into a scowl. Don't you sama please Hinata-chan, you aren't one of my subjects so you don't have to call me that. Hinata just nodded at this, too scared to argue. After all, you're not one of my subjects, if anything you're my friend Hinata-chan, aren't you? Hearing that last part, Hinata couldn't but gasp at hearing that this demon wanted to be her friend. While she was afraid of the demon fox in front of her, she didn't seem dangerous at all, a little strange maybe but still harmless. There was also the fact the elders wouldn't like her associating with the demon even if she was considered royalty where she came from. Looking at Naruto, though, he seemed to like her, and he was her only friend, so maybe she could trust her. Looking at the demon's girl's face, Hinata would have giggled if she weren't so nervous. Kyubi was biting her lower lip while her were down, and her eyes began to look watery. To Hinata it looked at reminded her of a puppy begging for attention. Figuring that this could come and hurt her later but deciding to risk it, Hinata answered the demon, to guess we could be friends Kyubi-chan. Said demon's response was grabbing Hinata by the shoulder and holding her close. All right. You and I are going to be good friends Hinata-chan. You know you remind me of a lot of myself Hinata-chan. Hearing this, everyone's sweat dropped. Tried to figure out how in the world they were alike in any way. With all the craziness around, Naruto decided to simplify things before it became a bigger headache. Can we just get some ramen already? All this crazy crap is driving me nuts. I'll even buy Ni-chan some dango if we just go HHNE-chan. Having just remembered that he crushed his elder sister with Imiko, he ran over to his snake companion. Imiko-chan, gets off, Ni-chan, hurry. Imiko moved as fast as she could, leaving behind a large carter with the body of Anko laying face down and not moving. Nervous, Naruto approached the body of his sister, hoping she was still alive and prying she was unconscious. And Ishinari, are you okay? There was no response as he got closer and nothing happened, until Anko's arm suddenly moved and grabbed Naruto by the front of his shirt, bring him to face with an angry Anko whose eyes were bright bloody red with fire coming out of them. Naruto was so scared that he could barely breathe and could barely make out a scream for help while Anko began to deliver her divine judgment on her little brother who dared to drop a giant snake on her. While this was going on, everyone looked at the scene feeling disturbed at what was going on. Some felt disturbed at the mere sight at what Anko was doing to Naruto. Except Lucy, who enjoyed what was happening to Naruto, and even thought that the way Anko was torturing made Anko look beautiful. Kyubi looked at Hinata, who was a bright red due to what she was seeing, and asked her, is it always like this around here? Walking through the village, the Hokage along with the heiress of the proud Hyuga clan, along with 3 demons, a giant snake, a highly trained kunoichi, and her little brother who was covered in bruises and glaring at his older sister with pure hate in his eyes. Anko, however, rolled her eyes at her little brother's antics. Will you get over it already? I said I would buy you ramen to stop being such a baby already. Naruto just kept up his glare while Anko was losing her temper and was about to give the little brat another beat down when she noticed the Hyuga and the demon moving forward. While she was suspicious of what the Hyuga would try, she was worried about what the demon would do, so she kept her eye on them. Hinata and Kyubi both walked up to blonde Kyubi a little more forward then, but Hinata was the one who spoke first. And Naruto-kun, I am sure Anko-san didn't mean to H her QT that badly. Anko and Naruto scoffed at this while just stared at her weirdly. Seeing this, Hinata began to blush and was getting nervous with everyone's response. Kyubi, however, could see Hinata was trying to help and decided to give her hand. While I can't speak for Anko-san, I can say that many demons would have nothing but respect for you by walking away from a beating like that. Hearing this, everyone looked at the Kitsune demon confused. Kyubi saw this and began to explain, in the demon world, if there is anything we can all agree, it's that all demons all have a love for fighting, and more damage you can take, the more you're respected. Hearing this, Naruto began to smile, feeling a bit better, and began to smile. Kyubi saw this and was happy. She made him feel better. Also, many female demons find scars to be very attractive. At this, everyone was now staring at Kyubi. The demon noticed this and realized what she said and began to get nervous and turn a little red as well. Well, we should hurry and get some ramen or whatever, and took off. Naruto just stood there confused, as did Hinata and Lucy, while the adults just stood there with a smirk, and Nyu gave a giggle and ran forward to catch up with Kyubi. Ichiraku Ramen Shop. Arriving at the ramen shop, the blonde-haired boy had a huge grin on his face. Here we are, ladies. The best place to get food in the whole village. Ichiraku Ramen. Anko and Sarutobi just rolled their eyes about the blonde's exaggerated statement of the best restaurant. The other members had their own opinion about the little shop. Imiko seemed relaxed as she slithered around the seats and fell asleep. Naruto was ecstatic about being at his favorite place in the whole village. Hinata and Kyubi were both curious about what kind of food such a small place could serve. NYU was excited about trying something new and foreign, while Lucy thought she was wasting her time and really didn't want to try something as disgusting as human food. Each of the children took a stool while the adult had to stand to the limited amount of seats at such a small restaurant. It wasn't long before the chef of the restaurant Tucci emerged from the kitchen. "Welcome to Ichiraku, Naruto, is that you?" The blonde smiled at the old man, who just smiled back and noticed he had guests, including the Hokage and guest. Showing his respect, Tucci bowed to the village leader. "Greetings, Hokage-sama." Seeing this, Sarutobi just smiled and waved him off. "It's fine, Tucci-san, there's need to bow." Hearing this, Tucci just smiled out of embarrassment and rubbed the back of his head and noticed the three demons in front of him, mainly the young fox demon who stood out. Tucci smiled at the fox demon, who noticed he was staring at her, and this must be the mighty fox demon everyone is talking about. Kyubi's ear picked up at this, wondering what the people were saying about her. Tucci could tell the kitsune girl was nervous and about what was being said about her. However, Tucci's smile never left his face. "They say that another terrifying and bloodthirsty demon had returned to slaughter us all." Hearing this, Kyubi began to bite her lip out of nervousness, afraid that everything she was trying to would be in vain before she even started. Tucci walked up to the fox demon and could see what he had said was bothering her, so he just grabbed her cheek and kept his smile. What they forgot to mention that this dangerous demon that they're so afraid of happens such a cute little girl. Kyubi blushed as this, while NYU and even Lucy began to sinker. After he let go of Kyubi's check, Tucci pulled out a pad of paper and pen. "Okay, it's not every day I get to be the host for a group of ambassadors, and the heiress of the Hyuga clan as well." Hinata blushed at getting the attention. Tucci chuckled at the group and began to take their orders. After he had set up another spare tables for the rest of the group. Naruto ordered his usual everything, while Anko ordered something dumplings and Sarutobi ordered a medium beef ramen. Hinata and the other girls were a bit hesitant about their orders. Hinata had never any food that wasn't prepared by high-class chiefs, and the others, Kyubi and NYU, didn't know anything about human food, and Lucy didn't care. Sensing the tension with the girls, Tucci just put on a friendly smile and offered them the basics to get them started, and they agreed to it, except for Lucy. Writing down what he needed, Tucci looked towards the kitchen. "I am get ready for a big order here." After that, a young girl appeared from the doorway with a big smile on her face. "Is Naruto here too, san?" the young preteen asked, to the embarrassment of said blonde. It didn't help that Anko started laughing out loud and was soon followed by the giggling of the many young girls around him. The blonde soon glared at young ramen chief and "I-chan, I told you not to call me that." That blonde pouted childishly, which only made the girls giggle more. Sadly, I-am wasn't done as she pouted on Naruto. "You don't like me calling you Naruto, Naruto." The blonde just turned a brighter red while everyone kept laughing. While they were doing this, I-am noticed the other members that were with the young blonde. She noticed that one of them was a Hyuga and the others were the must-have-been the demons that were on the lips of nearly everyone in the village. However, I-am, who was one to never based anything on just rumor, decided to get to know these four and more importantly tease Naruto later on. She looked at the four girls and gave a friendly smile. "Hello, I'm I-am, Tucci daughter, and nice to meet you." Each of the girls save Lucy gave a friendly greetings to the waitress, who smiled. After Tucci and I-am had started working on the food and were giving a moment to rest, I-am decided to try and get to know Naruto's new friends. She looked around and at her favorite blonde was bouncing around his chair, excitedly waiting for his ramen. She was used to seeing this since it was his favorite food, but unlike those other times, Naruto seemed actually happy and not trying to cover it up like he usually was. Despite Naruto's attitude, I-am had to know the boy long enough to read him like a book, and usually he seemed happy but so lonely, and now it was like he found a long-lost relative. She eyed each of the girls, wondering what their connections were to the young blonde. She noticed that the Hyuga would catch a glimpse at the blonde and then turn away and blush when he looked at, and would only talk when she was spoken to. Kyubi seemed to have no problem speaking her mind and asking questions. She seemed like a very curious. Sadly, she was getting her answers from Naruto, so they couldn't be very useful. Next was NYU. She was like a blend of both Naruto and Kyubi. She was full of energy and also very curious about the world around her. Then there was Lucy. She was very different than her sister. While NYU seemed sweet and open, Lucy on the other hand seemed very cold and distant, and would only talk if she felt like she needed to answer, and didn't seem to care about others' thought, especially if they were human. Seeing that the food would be soon, I-am decided to bug Naruto one time as she walked up the kids. "So Naruto, it's nice to see you with a couple of friends." Naruto nodded at this, happy as well about meeting his new friends. I-am smiled at this, and they're awfully pretty young girls. Naruto nodded at this as well, didn't really following, and got nervous when her saw I-am's grin grew bigger. "So are you going to ask any of them to be your girlfriend, you little stud?" Hearing this, Naruto turned a bright shade of red and began to stutter out sounds that seemed like words, while an even redder Hinata looked like she was about to pass out. While the three demons just looked confused at about what was going on, and trying to figure out why Anko was on the ground holding her sides and crying, each of the three demons looked at each other, and at everybody else getting confused and annoyed that they were out of the loop. After enough time, Kyubi got fed and asked what's so funny, what's a girlfriend supposed to mean anyway? She looked around to anyone to give answers and wondering how Hinata could glow like that. I and Anko tried their best to stop laughing and answer the young demon, but they were having trouble breathing, but eventually stopped and responded to the pouting fox demon. I tried to explain Kyubi-chan, a girlfriend is term given to when a young man and women are courting. The three demons still looked confused until Anko came out with a blunt response. She's asking if the brat is going to mate with any of you. This caused the three demons to look at the blonde with curiosity in their eyes and a blush on their faces for NYU and Kyubi. Lucky, however, looked like she wanted to slit his throat. With all of the tension that was building in the air, it was then that Tsuchi decided to bring out the food. Placing the food on the table, Tsuchi wished everyone a good meal and completely missed all the drama within everyone else. Everyone but Anko and Sarutobi ate in silence as the children all refused to make any eye contact with each other. Even Naruto, who usually inhaling the dish in front, just took tiny bites and kept muttering Baka and Aichan, and would look over to his left and catch Kyubi staring at him and turn away. After that he would look to his right and see Hinata also looking at him and turning away from him as well. While they were doing this, NYU noticed this and let out a giggle. Kyubi-chan, you and Naruto-san would make lovely mates. Her grin only grew when she noticed Kyubi's tail stiffen up. Kyubi looked at her friend and glared. Naruto-kun and I are just friends, nothing more, right Naruto-kun? Said Blonde just nodded his head dumbly while NYU rolled her eyes and Lucy gave a look of disgust at what she was hearing. Kyubi then took a deep breath. Besides NYU, you know that I'm already taken. Everyone went silent and looked at the fox demon confused while many just started not understand until Sarutobi asked, are you betrothed to someone, Kyubi-san? The demon fox looked at the old man and nodded her head and stirred her noodles. My father made it clear that in any case that he came across any enemy that he couldn't defeat, that his firstborn daughter would marry the first son of his enemy as a treaty for peace, and since I'm my father's fist and only daughter, I have to mate with whoever this person is. Many went silent to Anko, who got over her shock the fastest, clearly showed her outraged son of bitch. What kind of parent puts their only daughter through that kind of bullshit, and for what? To save face whenever he loses a fight just so he doesn't look like a goddamn pussy. Everyone just looked at Anko strangely except for Lucy, who had hearts in her eyes as Anko continued, if I meet this bastard I swear I'll use his heart as a hacky sack. Q looked at the purple-haired woman and just gave a sad smile. Thanks Anko-san, but that's not necessary. My father is dead and has been for about 6 years. Everyone went silent when they heard this and Lucy and NYU just looked away, showing that already knew the whole story. Hinata looked at the demon with sad eyes and asked, What about your mother, Kyubi-san? The demon's reaction wasn't any different. If anything it was worse. As she lowered her head, she died giving birth to me. Hearing this, Hinata tried to apologize, but the demon stopped her before she could. It's fine, Hinata-chan. You didn't know, and it doesn't really bother me that much. If it did, I wouldn't be here trying to form an alliance. Everyone but Lucy and NYU looked at the demon confused and interested, especially Sarutobi, and Kyubi cursed herself for saying too much. Seeing no other way out of this, she knew she would have to explain herself. She at least had to tell the Hokage the whole story. She just wanted to put it off until an official meeting had taken place between the two. Taking a deep breath, Kyubi decided to tell her new friends and allies the reason why she was there. My father, Nukpana Kyubi no Kitusen, was the same demon that attacked your village 6 years ago. Almost everyone gasped at hearing this except Sarutobi, who stood up and glared at the young demon, almost daring her make some kind of excuse, but before he could do anything, Kyubi simply raised her hand. Hokage-sama, I would advise you to calm yourself before you risk an international incident and an act of war against the demon world. The elder village leader took a clam breath and sat back down at his table, but his looks demanded an answer. Kyubi took a deep breath and relaxed her shoulders, knowing she wasn't going to like this, and began her tale. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Bloodlust002 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.